We're going to waste no time at all. We're going to jump right to the phone lines where we have Brad Wurthman on the line, Associate Director of Athletics for Marketing and Fan Development. Brad, how are you?
I'm doing really, really well, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk. Well, let's jump right into it. On Saturday, it was the first sellout for an Illini football game since 2011. Quite simply, how were you guys able to do it? What was the tipping point to get all those fans there?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it, quite honestly, it was a perfect storm. And we had some plans and some ticket packages and some options that worked for folks. Obviously, some renewed excitement around the program is something that none of us will complain about. And it was a good day weather-wise. We had a 6:30 kick, so everything kind of worked in our favor for that day, and people were really, really responsive and receptive to a lot of the offers that we came out with.
Hey, Brad, this is Peter Bailey Wells here. The obvious follow to that is sort of the sellout is great, and clearly there were a lot of people really happy with that. Fan-wise, I'm sure you all were happy with that, but then the result is not what of the game was not what everyone's going for. How do you try, not to let that kill your momentum in terms of bringing fans in?
That's a really good question, and it's something, quite honestly, the beauty of it is, in my line of work, our line of work, we never plan on victories, and it's something that we love them when they happen, but we have contingency plans and backup plans for when they don't. So in reality, how do we do it? We keep harping on the positives of Saturday. Everything from Grange Grove and the fact that when our team walked into Memorial Stadium, it was 25 people deep on either side of them, and then the atmosphere and the game environment and a sold-out student section for 2 weeks in a row that was intimidating and impactful. You saw that early in the game as you introed in with the Keyshawn run. You could hear the stands roaring at that moment. And so, how do we do it? Yeah, the result wasn't what we wanted and what we had hoped for, but the reality is it is what it is. And we need to make sure that people understand that, them being there, that sends a message to recruits, that sends a message to the future, that sends a message to what the program can be and what it's not that far removed from being. We just have to do it with sustained success, and we have to continue to put, with the coaching staff, they want to put the product on the field that makes people happy. Us, from the back office side, we have to make sure that we develop process and programs that make people able to come and easily accessible to attend our games. And a lot of it is, you could have sat at home and watched that game at home, and there's no way you would have felt the same level of emotional investment that those who were in that 60,670 person crowd felt the moment Keyshawn broke that run. So that's how we do it. We focus on those positives.
Brad, this is Jeff Omer here. You mentioned Grange Grove in your last statement, and I was at Grange this weekend taking in some of the new additions, including the beer garden, the concerts that will be happening there, and then the fan store as well. Can you talk about how important this aspect is to Memorial Stadium moving forward and pulling out the Illini fan base?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. We can't understate it enough. How critical Grange Grove is to the fan experience. Gone are the days, if we try to, the reality is if we try to sell you on football, you can get that at home. You get 13 camera angles and commentary, and you don't have to worry about parking, and you don't have to worry about weather, and you don't have to worry about planning your day around it. Grange Grove is what we provide, in addition to, obviously, the in-stadium atmosphere. But Grange Grove pregame is what we can provide for folks that maybe don't have long-standing tailgates or don't have options to go to. They now have an opportunity where they can come in, be a part of a community, celebrate the Illini on game day, take advantage of whether it's a free concert or, as you alluded to, the beer tent, beer garden. We've tried, whether it's the food trucks on First Street. We've tried to make it user-friendly enough that if you want to come and plan your day, I was thoroughly impressed with the number of fans who came out on Friday night in the middle of the monsoon to set up tents and tables and chairs, and they were great. And then we did it all again on Saturday morning, and it was awesome in the middle of monsoon part 2. So that's for sure, with Grange Grove at least, a lot of the amenities that we have to offer there, they're the added benefits to celebrating a game in and around Memorial Stadium that you don't get in your neighborhood in Urbana or Champaign or Rantoul or wherever you're coming to us from.
And we're here talking with Brad Wurthman, the Associate Director of Athletics for Marketing and Fan Development here on Illini Drive. And Brad, you earlier talked about the product on the field, and obviously once Lovey's team is able to get some sustained success going, it's going to be easier to get fans in the seats. But for now, how do you market that idea of a future? How do you market the idea that, okay, maybe they're not there yet? Championship banners aren't going to be going up this season, but how do you market that idea that great things are to come and maybe they're already happening?
A lot of it, we don't market the championship banners won't happen this year. When the cards are stacked, we're still 0-0 in conference play. And so it's certainly something that, our guys learned a lot on Saturday. Our coaches learned a lot. We'll put those pieces together. I have no doubt that product will continue to improve over the next weeks, months, years, what have you. But a lot of it is just dealing in hope. And, it's, as I alluded to in the beginning, we don't live on our side of the farm. We don't live where victories are guaranteed. And they can't be. That's what makes sports fun. You don't know if you're going to win or lose. Even if you're the number one team in the country, there's a chance you get beat. And so that we try to sell and convince and push the idea of the reality is we have a higher propensity of winning if our stadium is full, because it's not necessarily that day, but it is long term. And when we sustain success when our fan base sustain success with us. And we need people, if we have a down year, and we're very fortunate here at Illinois, we've got a great fan base, but if we're not doing great, we need you to stick with us. And on the same token, when we are number one in the country, we need you to buy in wholeheartedly and be a part of that program. The nice part, too, you can help build something here. We don't have and aren't at this point yet where we are the perennial number one in the country. But as much as I would love to say that that's something that we could do right away, the reality is we have to build to that. And our sales effort is that you can be a part of that process with us.
Brad, we've seen over the last few years, even with sort of less than ideal seasons for basketball, that State Farm Center still has a tendency to fill out, a few times a year. If you have some momentum coming out of football season, how do you see that playing into the attendance and to the fan experience for hoops? Is that something that you'll sort of try to capitalize on, when October, November rolls around?
Absolutely. We're already capitalizing on it. We're already pushing it. And the reality is, anytime you win in anything, it makes people a little bit happier, and in our neighborhood and in our town, especially our community, when you think about how our program works, when we win, it's an orange and blue day around here, and Saturdays become a little more exciting, and that will, of course, translate into basketball. And conversely, when basketball makes their run, that will translate into football. The truth is, they are feeling excited about one aspect of our program. It certainly bleeds over into all aspects of our program. So it's just something, where from a momentum standpoint, we have to ride that wave and make sure that we're capitalizing on our opportunities, but also getting people involved at a really, really, really granular level and then also at a macro level.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. Great stuff, and we look forward to talking again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And once again, that was Brad Wurthman, Associate Director of Athletics of Fan Development and Marketing. I'm sure he's a very, very happy man because the Illini just sold out a game for the football team for the first time since 2011, and it was the first time in a non-conference game since 1979.
87.
Did I say 79? What I meant was 87.
I heard 87.
I think, exactly. Gosh, the listeners might have heard me wrong. I know you guys heard me right, though. 1987. So very impressive. He's a happy man. A lot of great stuff to say. They're really doing a lot of interesting things in that marketing department right now to get fans involved, really increase the fan experience. It seems like things are, from his perspective, going great.
I absolutely agree. And the biggest difference I noticed just immediately is on the social media. I think they're reaching out, whether it's a big sport like football or basketball or something smaller like cross country or soccer. All the teams are trying to connect with their fan base and personalize everyone's experience as an orange and blue fan, and I think that's what they're having so much success doing, getting to the individual and communicating their message from there.
And I think it's interesting, I might not have known this or might not have assumed this, but I him saying, well, we don't plan for a win is an interesting way of looking at it because, I think that there would have been such a and I understand why he doesn't do that because, ideally, if you're a marketing person, you want people in the stands, whether they're an 0-12 team or, the undefeated national champions.
Yeah, because making money is nice.
Right, right, exactly. But it does sort of make you wonder about how this rest of this season for Illinois might go because if they had won that sellout game, with the momentum of that Keyshawn touchdown run right at the beginning and that Smoot safety. There were a few big plays in there that it's this is how Memorial Stadium should always feel. It should always feel like this is a soda bottle that has just been shooken up.
It's like the Diet Coke and Mentos.
Exactly. That's how you want the stadium to be. And so it'll be really interesting to see where the attendance goes the rest of the season, especially with games like Homecoming, Dad's Day, stuff like that.
And I think that's a really good point as well, Peter, because as Brad mentioned, they had a lot of success last week in terms of ticket sales for North Carolina's game because of the packages they were selling, whether they were giving great deals on just large number of tickets or just cutting off on the prices for the concessions. The marketing team was finding ways to appeal to the customers and get them to come out to the game. So I'm wondering if they're going to use different tactics or similar tactics for this upcoming weekend and then in weekends ahead, because they were very successful at getting people out this past weekend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think like Brad said, it was the perfect storm. They had a lot of things working for them, but I can't speak to it on a macro level because I don't know. I don't see the analytics. I'm not deeply involved like he is. But you have to imagine there's some amount of concern that they didn't win that football game. Because on a micro level, I look at my friends that were at that game. I got a lot of friends. Usually I have maybe a few friends that go to the games. I feel like everybody I know was at that game. And a lot of people... that at least a lot of people I know. I guess I once again can't speak for the whole student, population, but a lot of them won't go back now that they lost.
I was going to say I've been here 4 years, or this is my fourth year, and this was the first game that all of my friends were at the same time.
Yeah, and I can't speak.
And I don't know if that will happen again the rest of the year.
I think you're right. I think it's going to be very hard, no matter what marketing schemes they pull, unless they're giving the tickets out like they were for week one. I don't see that student section getting like that again.
I think it's worth pointing before we go to a quick ad that I think regular fans are going to come back in better numbers. Certainly, I don't think that the loss particularly hurts people that are regular season ticket holders or want to go to the games. But I think for students, absolutely, it's kind of whatever. I'll go drink on a Saturday.
Absolutely, and the money's not in the student section, but it is nice to see it full. I don't know. Well, you're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1. Once again, fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1 for more ticket information. We'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. Of course, we've got plenty to talk about with that huge Illinois-North Carolina game this past Saturday, and plenty to break down, so keep it tuned right here.
Hail to the orange. Hail to the blue. Hail alma mater, ever so true. We love no other, so let our motto be victory. Illinois, varsity. Secure your seats for Fighting Illini football today by phone at 1-866-ILLINI1 or online at fightingillini.com.
He definitely is not the only one out there made a mistake during the game, but he is the quarterback, and he accepts a lot of responsibility for our success or our failures.
That was the voice of Garrick McGee, the Illini offensive coordinator, and yes, Wes Lunt is, in fact, our quarterback. Welcome back into Illini Drive. I'm Kevin McCarthy here with producer man, I almost said Jeff Omer, Will Gerard, and social media man, Ryan Wilson. You can interact with us on Twitter at Illini Drive. We run lots of polls. We have lots of fun there. Tweet us your comments, questions. Tweet us what you're eating for dinner. We love hearing from you guys, whatever you want to talk about. And then, of course, my co-hosts, Jeff Omer and Peter Bailey Wells. You can also give us a call if you want to chat. The request line is 217-337-1071. Once again, that's 217-337-1071. If you got any questions at all about Illini football or comments, you want to chime in, you like the sound of your own voice, whatever, we'd love to hear from you, so give us a call.
We like the sound of your voice, too.
Thank you.
If you got, well,
you.
We don't mind Kevin's voice. I meant the listeners, but yeah, we don't mind your voice, Kevin.
That's funny. All right. Well, I thought you meant me. Anyway, let's launch into some Illini football talk. Speaking of Wes Lunt, there's plenty to talk about there. Wes underperformed, to say the least, and he even took the blame in the post game, but he sort of did so when prompted. One of the reporters asked something to the effect of, these things usually go on to the quarterback. A lot of responsibility is put on the quarterback. What do you have to say about that? And he's like, yeah, you can give me the blame for this one. So he didn't come out and say it, but he did take the blame, whatever. So your guys' thoughts on Wes's performance?
I think one of the things about Wes always has been his maturity. One of the things that struck me as one of his best qualities has always been his maturity. He's never whined. He's never complained, despite the fact that he's been, had the crap kicked out of him for, basically his playing career at Illinois, and had losing
both verbally
teams
and physically, I would say.
Right, and somebody on Twitter, I just throw this out here because it kind of bothered me, was somebody threw out on Twitter during the game, well, Wes is crap, he's playing like he's scared, and it's like, look, man, Wes is not, he didn't play well against UNC. There's no way you could argue that. But certainly don't jump on. Wes Lunt is not the person I would jump on. I probably wouldn't jump on anyone, honestly, after this loss. But Wes Lunt, if your instinct is to jump on Wes Lunt, that's probably the wrong instinct. Especially since he knows he messed up and he doesn't. He knows what he has to fix.
Yeah, the offense is a machine, and it only works if all parts are in on that. And
right.
I think the offensive line, while they only allowed, I believe, 2 sacks, they could have performed better. They need to open up better holes for the running game because, you've heard the narrative. The running game opens up the play action, opens up passing opportunities. So everything, it's one big machine, and all parts were not working. The line could have been better. West could have been better. Receivers needed to create separation and run better routes. They didn't. So I think really, it wasn't only Wes, but there were parts of Wes's game that we'll talk about in a second that needed to be improved.
Something that I thought was a little concerning from Wes's play, going to Peter's point, calling him a mature player. In my perspective, he almost didn't look as mature as he actually is on the game Saturday night.
I agree.
Considering he's a fifth-year player now, playing Division I college football, he did not look like the senior captain out there for the offense. Whether it's long time in the huddle, not getting the play calls down, pushing the play call clock down to nearly zero, it seemed like, for an entire quarter or two. And it just seemed like something was a little bit off, and from a communication standpoint, he wasn't there, connected with everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because Joe Spencer, the starting center and also a captain on this football team, said that Wes made all the right checks at the line. He was a great leader tonight. He said all these things. But I agree with you, Jeff. I didn't see that. I saw the play clock running down into single second clocks almost every single time, it felt like. And how frequently did we see Wes looking over to Garrick McGee and look on his face or with his hands up? That's just very concerning to me. I don't know what the communication errors were. Obviously, I'm not wearing the headset, so I don't know. But it's just very curious to me that we saw Wes have to look over the sidelines so many times, and we saw him a number of times take that play clock all the way down to 3-4 seconds. That was concerning.
And Peter, before you say something, just to add on to it all, I'm judging his performance as well off the basis of our conversations in the past where we think Wes Lunt could be an NFL quarterback, and just judging from that game Saturday, absolutely not.
I mean, to be fair, Jay Cutler is an NFL quarterback and looks like that. Anyway, that point aside, I think it's totally...
You could bring up quarterbacks that are a hell of a lot worse than Jay Cutler, but I get what you're trying to say.
And I think I think it is fair to... It's fair to say he played poorly. I mean, he really wasn't good. But I also think that if you look at the mistakes that were made, especially fumbles, throwing off his back foot, those are there's nothing that I saw that I didn't think was fixable.
That's true.
I mean, it's still an ACC defense, and you're still going to have to execute better. There's the matter of executing better, which is a much easier said than done thing. But as Lovie Smith would say, it's as simple as
That.
Right? A lot of that stuff is as simple as that. A lot of that stuff is Malik Turner runs a bubble screen, and Wes doesn't have a brain fart to fumble the ball on that fumble.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wes explained, for those of you who don't know, Wes explained his fumble, I believe his second quarter or something like that.
Late first, early second.
Late first, yeah. It was in the first half. He just dropped the ball, basically.
Literally.
He literally dropped the ball. And he said that was because he was expecting a bubble screen from Malik Turner or sort of like a swing pass, and Malik didn't run the route, and Wes just kind of panicked, which I agree, Jeff, is not a good sort of, with the end goal of him being an NFL quarterback, not a good sign, but that's also very fixable. That's not something that's going to happen every game.
Yeah, I guess where I have questions is his ability to respond to adversity, especially under a spotlight.
Yeah.
And
he talked about that.
Yeah, he did talk about it, and he didn't have a great answer, but he just said we as a team have always struggled to respond to adversity, and it just was interesting that with all the momentum that I had thought they gained as a team when the defense stopped North Carolina at the doorstep with just seconds remaining in the half to send it into the second half
Huge
down
play.
8. Yeah, that was
enormous
massive.
Play.
And they couldn't then get anything going, any consistent offense going in the second half. Now, a lot of that was because of penalties, but you could also put some of that on the leader. He needed to step up, I think, in moments and make those not happen. But another big problem for me was in really big moments in this game, in really big plays. For example, the 4th and 3 play when the Illini were on North Carolina's, I believe, 20-yard line late in the game. They're heading to the north end zone. They're down by 15. It was sort of their last-ditch effort to really get that game close again. Wes can't make the play. He throws off his back foot again. We didn't see a lot of people when they talk about Wes being an NFL quarterback, they talk about his ability to step up, his poise in the pocket, and make those big-time throws. He looked scared all Saturday, so that's where I'm concerned. And I'm not saying that he cannot be an NFL quarterback now.
Right.
I just think now he has some questions to answer.
Yeah, and I think, then even going to the rest of the offense, Keyshawn had a 65-yard run, right, to break open the game. But other than that, he had something like 15 carries for, let me pull up those stats.
And against a bad defense. That's a bad rushing defense. So their secondary is good, but their rush defense has been poor.
Well, right, and Kendrick Foster had another reasonable game, right? I mean, Kendrick Foster has been the brightest light in Illinois' offensive constellation, to paint you a pretty picture.
Wow, that was beautiful.
But
tearing up.
But it's sort of, I don't know. Keyshawn rips off a long run, and that puts him over 100 yards, and well, dandy. But between the tackles, it wasn't a lot. I don't know. It was like 3-4 yards a chunk, and then we'd run a play for 3 yards and then go for 0.
Yeah, fair to say that Keyshawn Vaughn's performance so far this year has been fairly disappointing.
I don't know about fairly disappointing. Well, maybe. I'm not sure I would say that exactly, but I just didn't. Unimpressive, I think, is a better way of putting it, because it's not that he's been bad. He's just been average, and this was a season that many of us saw as an opportunity for him to go over 1,000 yards, to be the workhorse, feature back, whatever you want, a big hoss, to use one of Kevin's favorite words. One of, whatever you want to call it. This was going to be the game where he really was like, all right, here we go, I'm gonna.
Is this a recording of Keyshawn right now?
No, Keyshawn didn't say this. And to be fair,
Yeah.
Keyshawn has never really been a outwardly braggadocious.
He's a pretty
not
humble,
a boaster.
quiet
He's a
guy.
pretty humble, quiet guy. So I'm not putting any of this on him necessarily. But a lot of us who looked at it and saw this season as an opportunity for him to go over 1,000, I think it's unimpressive so far.
Yeah, we as the media painted this picture, but I won't even say just the media, because you look at Coach Smith, I hate calling him Coach Smith, Lovie. You look at what Lovie said throughout the offseason. He said, yeah, we're going to, we're a black and blue football team. We're going to pound it on the ground. Keyshawn Vaughn's our workhorse. He's our man.
Right.
He called him all sorts of things. He spoke at lengths about Vaughn and how impressed he was with him, and so far the production hasn't been there on the field.
And just because I just got the stats up, the number I was trying to pull out earlier, he had 116 yards on 15 carries. Subtract the 65-yard run from that, and he averaged 3.6 yards a carry, which is just not very good.
Yeah. Not good enough, certainly.
Not good enough, yes.
And it makes me just wonder how the play of Wes Lunt would affect Keyshawn then as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially during NC's game, where NC could have just turned the on switch for stopping the run defense and then played a little bit looser on Wes's end, just expecting him to not be able to hold up his end of the bargain at quarterback. it makes me wonder if Wes had a stronger game in the pocket, if Keyshawn would have had a stronger game than running out of the backfield.
It also makes you wonder, in terms of sort of connecting the pass and the run, the fact that Wes wasn't throwing to his receivers, his wide receivers, as often as he was throwing to running backs and tight ends. 17 receptions, I believe, and 7 of them were in the hands of wide receivers. And Vaughn was the leading receiver receptions-wise. Malik Turner had 33 yards, which was the most on the team, but 3 for 33 with 1 touchdown from your best receiver is like just not very...
Well, that goes back to Wes's lack of confidence in that game. I mean, it's sort of like the Jay Cutler effect. I remember Cutler a couple years ago would constantly check down when his confidence wasn't high, because if you're unconfident as a quarterback and you don't want to step up and make those throws, well, then you end up always using your running backs as a crutch, right? And I think that's kind of what he's been doing so far with his backs. He drops back, he's under pressure, check down really fast. And not to say that you shouldn't ever check down.
It's an understandable instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to say you shouldn't ever check down, because there's a lot of value in that, but it's usually a byproduct
It's
of
not productive, right? It's not productive. And it makes you also wonder about the line. Coach Lovey has been very, silent on Megginson and whether or not, what's going on with him. We haven't heard anything. He won't talk about injuries because he doesn't have to. And so we'll have to.
Lovey.
Yeah, we'll see sort of once practice rolls around tomorrow and Wednesday whether or not he's in the ranks. But pretty much like we. It's tough to know whether there were some offensive line struggles. You get Joe Spencer back, whatever. We'll see.
And there's a question about the chemistry on that line. We haven't seen the same group for 2 straight weeks. It's flip-flopped, and we probably won't see... We're going to see a different group again next week because of Megginson's injury.
Unless Megginson was crumpled on the ground and is fine now, which doesn't seem very logical.
Seems highly unlikely. So we'll talk about that and a whole lot more. Plenty of defense and special teams.
We are always having special talks on Illini Drive.
Yes, we are. Defense and special teams talk to come. You're not going to want to miss any of it. So stay tuned right here to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1.
Twitter.com/WPGU1071.
Hail to the orange. Hail to the blue. Hail alma mater. Ever so true. We love no other. So let our motto be victory. Illinois. Varsity. Fighting Illini football mini plans start at only $50. Secure your seat today by phone at 1-866-ILLINI1 or online at fightingillini.com.
And we will get right back to where we started from at the beginning of this show, which was talking Illini football.
Punny.
Hey,
Kevin's punny.
Hey, what a segue. Anyway, I did just think of that one as that song happened.
Great.
I didn't know what the bump was. Anyway, Lovie Smith likes to remind the media a lot since Saturday that they are a 1-1 football team. He can do math quite well. Yes, they are 1-1.
Yeah.
Another thing he likes to remind us of is it is a long season. Yes, it is a long season. The Illini have 10 games to play. So just a couple of interesting things. I'd say it's as simple as that, in the words of Lovie Smith.
Well, at some point this year, we were thinking about bringing out a "it's as simple as that" counter for y'all because and there's nothing wrong with it, but it's Lovey's favorite phrase.
He said it 7 times in 15 minutes.
It's simple as that,
today.
which is an interesting, better than if not for that one play, we would be in the game, which was Tim Beckman's go-to, just moronic phrase.
The reason that it actually does bother me, the simple as that thing, is because he'll take a really complex problem. Someone will ask about an issue that's serious to the team and pertinent to a certain game or moment, and he'll say, blah blah blah, simple as that. Well, Huss, no, it's not simple as that. This is a more complicated issue. You can't just justify that statement by saying simple as that. Give us more.
Either way, we'll throw that out for you, I think, maybe as a fun thing sometime. Now we're going to kind of turn to the defense. 48-23 game. You think they scored 48 points, defense did something wrong. Kevin, did they do something wrong? What do you think?
The defense certainly did. They had a lot of issues, but I also do think it's worth pointing out they were put in some really bad spots because of a Wes Lunt fumble, because of the special teams was horrible, but the defense didn't do enough. How often this coaching staff and these players harp on the importance of takeaways? They didn't get a single one. Of course, the special teams took the ball away on that silly Ryan Switzer. I don't know what happened. Miscommunication. Ball was on the ground. Illinois picked it up. But the defense wasn't able to force a takeaway. That was key. Another thing the defense couldn't do, how about get off the field on 3rd down in the second half?
Yeah, and they talked about that a lot today.
Yeah, I mean, there was like the 3rd and 15 that they converted a bubble screen on. It seemed like a lot of easy slot passes, went for 20-yard gains. And I understand if a guy, And then Hardy Nickerson said, we didn't let them break any big...
Coach Hardy Nickerson.
Yeah, excuse me. Coach Hardy Nickerson said we didn't let them break any big plays until late in the game. We were able to keep guys in front of us. Well, it's great that you can keep guys in front of us, but you can't let them rip off 15, 20-yard chunk plays all day. And there was a lot of those chunk plays in the second half. So did the defense do something wrong? Absolutely. They need to play a lot better.
And, I don't know. It's like they just didn't...
You're frustrated.
Yeah, it was inconsistent. You'd have a DeJuan Smoot safety or a Carroll Phillips tackle for loss or a Hardy Nichols. Like, they combine, some really good plays with just sort of, mediocrity, which, Illinois hasn't even had, big plays, really, in the last few years on defense. So it's you get a little taste, but then it's nah, 3rd and long, we're going to let them convert. So that's sort of what was frustrating to me was, the consistency, which, they address. They're not hiding from it. They know that, like you said, Nickerson talked about how they have to convert on 3rd down. But, yeah, I just, for a team that has, the nation's leader in tackles for loss in Carroll Phillips, didn't play well.
Mm-hmm. What puzzled me the most with the defense was how they handled North Carolina's quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, because it was clear that he's not a running quarterback or your stereotypical.
He can move, but he's not a runner, yeah.
Yeah, he can certainly move. But I think that the line and whoever was responsible for watching him on any given play was giving him way too much credit as a quote-unquote runner. I think on the early couple possessions of the game within the first quarter, he had a couple running plays that he just took by himself. I think there were options that he decided not to hand the ball off, and he took it off on his own.
The longest play of the first half was Trubisky's 38-yard run.
Yeah, to the south end zone.
Yeah, towards the south end zone. Didn't make it in, but yeah.
I found it really puzzling how they weren't able to figure him out and figure out what he was going to do on any given play, whether it was just a run or a pass in the option.
Yeah, that was interesting because as the game moved along, that option really just became running plays with Elijah Hood. So, yeah, I would agree with that. And Peter, you point out consistency. That seems to be a problem for the whole team, right? The offense couldn't find any consistency.
Right, yeah.
Defense couldn't, and it didn't seem like the coaching staff could either. We've got a lot of Girl Scouts looking in on the show through the big glass window. We're saying hey to them. What's going on, Girl Scouts? Thanks for dropping by the show. Anyway, where was that consistency? And it's going to be interesting to see how can they get that consistency going against a very good Western Michigan team. I hope people realize that this Western Michigan team is no joke. They just put up 70 points last week, and they beat Northwestern in week 1. So how is this defense going to get consistency? I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that, Peter? What do they need to do? A takeaway would be nice, but that's not consistent play.
Sack the quarterback. That's what I think they should do. It's going to be a different, stopping on 3rd and long is just a matter of it's watching tape. That's going to be especially on the defensive line, which has so much talent. It's just going to be a watching tape, and it's going to be a knowing the scheme better thing for both the coaches and the players. But I think in terms of earlier downs, if you get if someone's passing on 1st down, first down's a running down. Right, bring the heat, and if someone's passing, don't give them 5 seconds in the pocket. Go get after that quarterback, and I think especially as they get into Big Ten play with running backs who are bowling balls, who are looking for the Akram Wadleys and the name a Michigan, name a running back in the Big Ten that is going to go for 100 yards, like Saquon Barkley. There we go. I was thinking of somebody else. They're going to have to get stops on 1st down and make it 2nd and long because then they can buffer themselves for a 3rd and long. You know what I mean?
And then get off the field on 3rd down because they weren't able to do that against North Carolina.
If the end goal is getting off the field on 3rd down, the earlier in the down sequence you can limit their playbook with either a sack or a stuff, leaving them at 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, that's going to matter too. Because, it's one thing to go okay, we gave up 7 yards, and now it's 2nd and 3, and then they have the whole playbook available, and then we get a tackle for loss, so it's 3rd and 8. I don't know. It seems like you're going to want to limit that playbook earlier in the sequence.
Do you have questions about the depth of this secondary? I'm asking.
Not sure.
I'm asking because I think I do have questions there because I see the depth in the defensive line. And even though they had problems pressuring the quarterback at times, Trubisky was mobile, but they did. they couldn't get after him as much as they wanted to. I feel like I really see the secondary getting tired because they don't have a lot of depth at that position, certainly not a lot of experience. I don't know. It's concerning to me. Thoughts?
I wonder about the depth as well, Kevin, because I wanted to bring up a point that we haven't mentioned yet about North Carolina's running the no-huddle offense and what type of effect that would have on a defense, especially one that doesn't have a lot of depth. So I guess if we're going to start talking about Western Michigan and what the defense would need to do they run?
Yeah, they're a hurry up fast. From everything,
oh, yeah, they scored 70 points last week.
From everything Hardy Nickerson Sr., the coach, defensive coordinator, said is this team likes to get after it, they like to move.
And that's my biggest concern then going forward to this next week, because that's where I thought the defense was struggling the most, just getting set and maybe just having the go through a long drive, maybe have to battle through a couple of third downs as well if they give it up. I was most worried about how well-conditioned the defense was and if they could last a full 60 minutes on the field.
I think the starters, so maybe I'll agree with you guys, but I will point out, I thought the starters in the secondary played pretty well. Darius Mosley had a couple great pass breakups.
He really screwed up that play in the north.
But the one in the end zone. But, this is the play we talked about earlier. That end of half pass breakup that he had, that was I think, and I don't think people reacted to it the way I expected. That was the biggest play of the game. If Illinois had gone on to win the game,
I agree.
That would have been, along with Keyshawn Vaughn's run, probably the biggest play of the game.
Since we only have a couple minutes here, I want to talk about special teams really fast. Ryan Frayne was in a bicycling, so everybody keeps saying biking, and they're like, oh, was it motorcycle or was he on a bicycle? He was on a bicycle. We're not exactly sure what happened, but he got in an accident and did not play in Saturday's game. It sounds like he might go for Western Michigan. We're not sure.
Yeah, after the game, Lovie Smith said he's with the team. He's nothing threatening, but he wasn't able to play, and David Reisner just was not up to the task.
No.
Just pooching punts everywhere. He just was not. I don't know if it's a matter of you're cold coming off the bench, or if he just had a bad day, or if it was the wind. But whether it was into the wind, maybe he's not a good punter. But into the wind, against the wind. With the wind, against the wind. I said the same thing. He just wasn't effective. I don't know what his average was, but it was other than the one punt he had, other than the one 50-plus yard punt that pinned him in for the safety, which he does get some credit for, but it was also with the wind. And he was bad. And he was bad on kickoffs, too. That was the other thing, was he was hitting kickoffs. North Carolina's kicker had 2 or 3 touchbacks. Maybe even more than that.
More than that, without a doubt.
Right. He was booting the ball out of the end zone, and they just didn't have it. Illinois didn't have that field possession battle ready the way North Carolina did.
Yeah, and there's plenty more to talk about here, but I think we got to head to a break because when we come back, we'll have Matt Gertsmeier. He's our Illini Hoops columnist and recruiting expert. He's going to call in. Plenty to talk about because the Illini basketball team had a few huge recruits in town. We'll talk to him, see what the vibe is, see what the pitch from John Gross to those young men has been, and maybe what are the chances that a few impact players could be coming to play at the State Farm Center. So we'll be right back in just a minute here on WPGU 107.1.
Hail to the orange. Hail to the blue. Hail alma mater, ever so true. We love no other, so let our motto be victory. Illinois, varsity. Fighting Illini football mini plans start at only $50. Secure your seat today by phone at 1-866-ILLINI1 or online at fightingillini.com.
And welcome back into Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1. Once again, fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI1 for tickets and information. But now, my favorite segment of the show, I can't even believe this right now, we're heading to the phone lines to talk with Illini Hoops columnist and basketball recruiting extraordinaire savant, boss, guru, good time Matty Gertz. Matt Gertsmeier, how are you? Matt, where are you at, man? We got him on the phone? Where's he at? He's a ghost. He's a ghost.
We're trying to figure out how to get Matt on. We'll just give you a little bit of a preface. The Illinois basketball team had quite a few. Matt, can you hear us?
Matt, are you there?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey,
Dude,
there
I
he
just gave you
is.
the best intro ever, and we must have messed something up tech-wise. But once again, here he is, basketball extraordinaire guru, whatever I just called him a second ago. Good time, Matty Gertz. Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. A little technical difficulties, but...
Are you doing good or are you doing well? Because unless you're clothing the naked and feeding the homeless, I can tell you that you are doing well. Anyway, let's jump into recruiting talk.
Not a journalism major, though.
Absolutely. Actually, just changed my major. But anyway, we're talking a lot of basketball hoops recruiting. A lot of stuff went down this weekend, and frankly, I don't know who was here. I know that you do, though, so why don't you talk us through what went down for Illini basketball this weekend?
Yeah, this was a big weekend for John Gross and his class of 2017. He had his commits, who consisted of Jeremiah Tillman, Javon Pickett, and DeMonte Williams. And with them was the big man, 6'7", Chris Wilkes, who is the most sought-out recruit in this class of 2017. He's a 5-star, ranked number 18 or number 14 in the nation, depending on what site you use. This guy's a real deal. He was putting on a show at Ubben during that little practice that was going on in the afternoon on Saturday. Just windmill dunks, straight athleticism. The guy's a real deal. And so Gross had them for the whole weekend, and I thought it was very unique, the weekend that he picked. The North Carolina game against Illinois football was just the most electric, most great, just one of the greatest atmospheres I've ever seen as an Illini fan, both basketball and football, no matter what type of sporting event. It was just a great situation to bring Wilkes to. And also the fact that he had 3 commits with him. They definitely looked like they were bonding towards the end of the night. They were joking around with each other, laughing. It was definitely a good call by Gross to bring the commits with, just to kind of show Wilkes what he would be working with if he was to commit. And I think it was a good weekend. It was a successful weekend, pardon me. And so, yeah, it's just going to take time, because I think Wilkes is going to take all of his visits that he's scheduled, and then he's going to make a decision.
Hey, Matt, it's Peter over here. How you doing?
Hey, TBW.
When you look at this recruiting class that Gross is putting together, you know, is what's his pitch? You know, he's got 3 of these guys already, but what's his pitch to Wilkes? Is it you can play with these guys? Is it you can play at State Farm Center? Is it you can play at Illinois? Is it you can play for me? What you know, if you were John Gross, I guess you don't have a direct line to John Gross, but if you were John Gross, what would be your pitch to Chris Wilkes?
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of good points. The fact that the class currently ranks number 3 in the nation is a great pitch to sell Wilkes. I think he knows that they currently have 4 commits. If he becomes the 5th, I think that's a scary freshman class, depending on who he redshirts and doesn't redshirt, and maybe who transfers and doesn't transfer. But that is a scary good freshman class. So that's a great pitch right there. The fact that they are number 3, Wilkes, I think, would definitely put them at number 1. It just is going to have to see how some of the other top 100 recruits play out. That's a good pitch right there. Another great pitch, I think, is the potential for Wilkes to go to the NBA. A lot of analysts and scouts are saying that he has what it takes to make it to that next level. And this weekend, what a great opportunity for Wilkes to interact with Myers Leonard. I'm not too sure if they were able to talk, but Myers Leonard was on campus, and that's a guy who just signed an extension with the Trailblazers. So it shows that the path to the NBA is achievable if you go with Illinois. It doesn't always seem that way. Just when you look at guys who go to Kentucky, UNC, Duke, those guys are prominent in the NBA. But doesn't mean that if you go to Illinois you can't make it there. I think that's another good pitch. I think the fact that there's been a ton of renovations with the State Farm Center, with just Illinois basketball program overall. I mean, last year they had a losing season, and they still had 5 ESPN televised games. I think that's pretty darn good for a team that was below 500. So if you add Wilkes, you're still going to guarantee some nationally televised games, and probably add more just because of the talent they're going to bring. So I think there's a lot of ways that Gross can use this, Wilkes to pitch him and recruit him, and I'm almost positive he had even better ways than what I mentioned too. So.
Matt, all the news that we're hearing about Wilkes seems pretty positive, but if things do not go Illinois' way when he decides to make his choice on his school, what other players are Illinois looking at, and who are they looking to fill the void of? Yeah,
so Wilkes is a small forward. He'd be a great replacement for Malcolm Hill. We're going to lose Malcolm this year with graduation. And we still have a few other guys who can play that small forward spot, but Chris Wilkes, I think, as a freshman, even he's a little undersized. I'd like to see him like put on a little more body mass, get in the weight room, strengthen up a bit. But even as a freshman, I could see him playing some major minutes to fill that void. But this weekend, there's another visit happening. His name is Abu Kigab. He's a small forward as well, 6'7". So he still has a lot of size. Kigab ranked, I think, number 134 in the nation on 247sports.com. So he's solid, not as great as Wilkes, but I think he'd still be a solid addition. The biggest question with him, though, is he's from the West Coast, and a lot of analysts are saying it's Oregon all the way. He's pretty much locked. But there's a reason he made a visit with Illinois, so there's still a chance, I think. Can't overlook that. The other recruit that I've been looking into is Mayan Kerr. He is a power forward from Florida. I actually was able to speak with him a few weeks ago. I called him up and just kind of got his taste on how the recruitment process has been going for him. He said he hasn't any visits yet, although he's wanting to schedule an official visit with Illinois. And I think Mayan Kerr, he just cracked the top 100 on ESPN for the class of 2017. He's another big man, and I mean, frankly, Illinois can't get enough big men. They're pretty much undersized. They're losing Maverick Morgan, Mike Thorne, due to graduation this year. So if they could somehow maybe manage to scoop up Kerr as well, I think that'd be another great asset. But yeah, Wilkes is up in the air. Kigab is leaning towards Oregon. Kerr, I think Illinois is his best offer when looking at his schools. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out because there's only 2 spots left. There's been offers made. So right now it's just a matter of who accepts first and do those spots even get filled. If Gross doesn't choose to fill those spots or if no one accepts the offers, he's got to shift his attention to 2018 where he could fill those roster spots.
All right, Matt, I'll give you a doozy here to close things out. Give you a put you in Josh Whitman's shoes. If John Gross gets Wilkes, secures, a top 5 recruiting class, but does not make the NCAA tournament with this year's team, does he keep his job, yes or no?
I think Gross keeps his job. He's always been on the fence, I feel, especially these last couple of years, just because he's finally had the chance for his recruits to actually be on his roster and playing the bulk of the minutes. I still think he keeps his job just because of the fact that he's already made such an impact with the recruiting this year. And if you change the coaching up and fire him and put someone else in that role, there's a good chance that those guys are going to decommit and transfer to go somewhere else, and that's just a risk that right now Illinois can't take. I know he's been on the hot seat for a while, and I think why not just keep him for one more time? Let him. This has been one of the best recruiting classes I think that Illinois basketball scene has seen in a long time. So I think you have to at least give him a chance on this. I think Whitman is going to follow through with that just because he's already made a huge coaching move with Lovie Smith to the football program. If you fire Gross, I'm not too sure there's a replacement right now better than Gross. So it's almost just like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's kind of looking like it might be broken soon. So it's a matter of Gross's class coming together for the class of 2017 and kind of putting on a show. And I think he stays even after if they miss the tournament this year.
Matt, great stuff as always. Thank you for taking the time to talk. We always appreciate a little good time Matty Gertz in our lives.
Hey, appreciate it, boys. Great show.
And, that was Matt Gertsmeier, basketball extraordinaire. But I think that wraps up today's show. So any parting words of wisdom from any of you?
I'm never going to make such a bold prediction for Illinois football ever again.
That's
Good
right.
idea.
I promised pre-show that I would gloat a little bit, and I'll keep it to a minimum, but...
Oh, you were right, Peter. You're so smart.
Only one of these 3 hosts...
You know so much about football.
Only one of the 3 hosts on this show is 2-0 this season with Illinois predictions.
That wraps up Illini Drive for Peter Bailey Wells, Jeff Omer, Ryan Wilson, and Will Gerard. I'm Kevin McCarthy. If you missed anything at all from today's show, head to dailyillini.com. We'll have the whole thing podcasted for you in just a few minutes. Thank you so much for listening. I love the heck out of you guys. All of you who listen, you're wonderful people. So thank you so much for tuning in. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads, and the day after that, and for the rest of the week, frankly. It's always 6 o'clock right here on WPG.